All right, we are broadcasting live, and I love this. Stephanie, look at the participation box. You see like all the names, and most of these names have been on every single one of these webinars since late March when we started doing them. I say that now, and all the phone numbers are there, right? So, but I love that people are calling in too.
I've seen lots of familiar names, so hi to everyone.
And the information they want to hear from you, like Heather Egan from Grapevine and Joe Slack from Virginia. I mean, all of these. This is awesome. I love seeing these names, and if I can't see them at trade shows, at least I get to see their name and talk to them virtually, which makes me very happy.
Awesome, yeah. Oh, fun. Oh, got a couple colleagues on the phone.
Pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
As always, hit us up in the chat. Tell us when you're coming. Sherry from Flagstaff, Arizona, always on the calls. I love it. Maria from New Orleans hasn't missed a call either. Love to see all of these names come up and tell us where you're coming in from. We have a great conversation today. Stephanie, we have been going back and forth with Betsy from Tour Operator Land, who sponsors all of these, and Stephanie and myself trying to find the right day that works for Stephanie when they were getting all of their strategies figured out and their safe and clean figured out, and or their peace of mind planning. I need to call it your term and not our term. But we finally found a day that works, so I'm super excited to talk to Stephanie and Globus and figure out what's working for them and how everyone on the call can get involved and kind of make the best decisions on some of the decisions that you've made. So it's going to be a fun conversation.
I hope so.
Well, this group isn't shy, so we'll let you know if it's not. Yeah,
exactly. That's fine. That's fine.
Other fun things that have happened. Everyone on this call, obviously, leisure and all aspects of leisure travel. But our sister company just held an event over the last 3 days, first in-person event for the meeting side of the business that we work, as you were working, we were working on trying to put together, our clean and safe initiatives. And we did it. It was smaller numbers, and it was a very different type of trade show. There weren't receptions, there weren't big meal functions. Everybody was socially distanced and wore masks and got their temperatures checked. But we did a great event and actually saw some people in person over the last couple of days, and that was really encouraging. Everyone seemed very happy about it.
Having these first groups or first events is just so exciting. I think it means a lot to the whole industry, right? Each person's success, each company's success sort of helps us build and keep moving forward. So it's exciting to hear when our fellow tour operators are out there on the road, or our event companies are moving forward. It's very encouraging, and you finally see a light at what has been a very long tunnel.
A much longer tunnel than any of us expected it would be. That's for sure. Tours moved. We've seen events moved, and changed 3 or 4 times in the year. I think everyone's learning from each other on how they can do their tours, do their events, and sell their prospective destinations or attractions or hotels. So conversations like this mean a lot to all of us. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I know that this group in particular is not shy, as I mentioned, and they're going to have a ton of questions. So we're going to jump in and just start, having a conversation. Everyone on the line that is joining us today, Q&A box is the best place to drop in a question so we can keep them all in one place. But as always, we're going to look at that chat box, and we're going to make sure that we get to everyone's question that we can. So we're going to start first. Stephanie Brooks, as I'm sure most of you all know on the phone, is the Director of Contracting for the Globus family of brands. But Steph, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about all of the brands included and kind of what you're doing right now and what Globus is focused on right now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sherry. So the Globus family of brands, we are comprised of of 4 key brands worldwide. So Globus and Cosmos, which I know many of you that I'm seeing on the call, we work with you, or you're familiar with our touring brands. So those are our motor coach touring brands operating worldwide. And both of those brands operate, we operate quite a bit here in North America. We have our Avalon Waterways brand, which operates river ships primarily in Europe, but we also have ships in select areas in Asia, and then we operate some Avalon in South America as well. And then our Monograms, which is more independent vacations for the more independent-minded traveler, and that's a lot of city programs and some multi-destination packages in especially some of our exotic areas where they're a little more handheld with local guides or local hosts. So those are sort of our 4 key brands that we would love to be operating. We have not operated like many companies. We've been suspended our operations through this fall. And we are now just starting to get going and rejoining the land of touring. So that's exciting. My primary role, as Sherry said, is Director of Contracting. I oversee our North America contracting team and support some of our other contract destinations of South America and the exotics. I've also oversee our health and safety and risk management initiatives for any of the areas that we operate specifically, and our custom tour operations team. So that's sort of the world I live in most of the time. Although lately it's been a lot of health and safety. So that's, yeah, yeah, who knew?
I was going to say, everybody on this line, everybody on the call right now is shaking their head going, yeah, that's what we've been doing too.
I know more about sanitizing than I ever did before. So those are the world's, those are kind of my primary focus right now with the company. And I've been with the company for 16 years. So, you know, very, very happy to be with them. We are starting, as I kind of alluded to, we're starting to resume operations. I'm very excited.
I was going to call you out on that one. I was like, wait a minute, you guys are doing tours.
We are doing tours. Last week, shout out to our Canadian partners in the Rockies. We operated a program in Banff and Calgary, and that was our first group Globus tour. So it was great to finally get moving and get some learns under our belt, and then we have some tours going out in November. So slowly but surely. So
I love that. So I mean, you guys had a tour. How did it go?
You know, it went really well. So it was a smaller group. Our tour director did a great job in sort of setting expectations, managing some of the new protocols that we have, a lot of new protocols that we all have to contend with, managing that. And I think that travelers, from what we're hearing, you know, they were just excited to be out and exploring again. And yeah, the initial feedback is really good, so, and really positive. Our suppliers were ready, excited. For most of them, it was their first group that they'd welcomed, sort of commercial group, and you know, everyone did a great job. So yeah, we're off to a good start.
I love that. And you're already getting a shout out from Amanda saying that they loved hosting you. So they were so happy to see tours. I think all of us are on the edge of our chair going, this is great. Tours are running. Yep. But you mentioned stuff about safety and protocol. So let's just talk about that first, because generally we have a lot of questions. We already have like a ton of questions coming into Q&A too, but let's talk about what that meant for you. What was piece of planning? What was that plan that you guys put together to maybe put your customers at ease?
Absolutely. I think like most of us, you know, we've been kind of living and breathing this for so many months, and the protocols have been adjusting and, you know, sort of morphing as we learn more. You know, we have always had a pretty robust health and safety focus with our tours, but it's been very much behind the scenes. You know, we vet all our suppliers pretty carefully. We stay engaged with what they're doing and how, you know, what safety measures they have implemented. But obviously this is at a different level and a different scale, because the challenge is trying to find commonality in what protocols people have implemented. And what they're doing and understanding that. I mean, it really meant that at a granular level, we had to understand what the hotels were doing, what the motor coach companies were doing, what our attractions are doing, and then try to find protocols that really work, and set a good foundation for what we're doing. Obviously, so we sort of broke it down into pre-trip, on-trip, and post-trip, and kind of evaluated every piece of the puzzle there. For the last few months, a lot of our work has been just spent understanding what different associations and health organizations are doing. So what's the WHO, what's the World Health recommending? What's WTTC recommending, and CDC evaluating that, and evaluating it on a global level, but as well as a state level here in the US, and provincial level in Canada, is really understanding what was happening in each state and province. So that sort of helped to shape our protocols on tour. And then part of it was also just developing training tools for our teams, for our tour directors, for our operations staff, for our incident team, so that we all are on the same page in terms of what the expectations are on tour. So a lot of work for sure. And I know that all of our suppliers and my other fellow tour operators out there are doing much of the same work. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I was just reading through, and one of the questions, specifically related to the piece of planning that you guys have come up with. Are you having your customers sign a waiver? I mean, is that one of the rules that came into play there?
Absolutely. So we have kind of our peace of mind policy, which really speaks to how we're managing bookings and cancellations, and allowing flexibility for people to move. Because we recognize for the next year, part of that is going to be in flux. And so you want to, I think, assure people that they can move if they need to. And so part of our peace of mind plan going into 2021 allows our guests to move to another destination, another tour, another date, very easily. So I think that's a critical piece of what we're doing to just help kind of consumers feel a bit more confident.
Yeah, a little more comfortable.
Absolutely. And then we have our on trip, our sort of assurance plan that really speaks to what we're doing on tour. And part of that is just preparing guests for what they can expect on tour. So it goes through a variety of different elements, everything from what's it going to be like on the coach, what we're doing to keep them safe on the coach, what we're doing on tour to try to manage and keep them safe. In preparation for going on tour, they're also have to review sort of our general terms and conditions, and part of that does include a waiver that they have to review to say, yes, I agree that we're traveling in riskier times, and while we can make every effort to keep you safe, you are taking some risk on yourself. So that actually can all be found on our website. If you go into for Globus, if you go into globusjourneys.com and look under health and safety, all of those plans are sort of outlined there, and we're updating them as needed. As part of, to answer your question, long story short, yes, there will be a waiver that they sign, a questionnaire that they sign and agree to when they travel, that will just go over, I think, some of the basic things that we've all become accustomed to when you go to the dentist or whatever it may be.
Right.
Have you traveled? Are you experiencing any symptoms? And it will go through a list of questions that they agree to. And they'll be advised of that before they travel with us, that will be a requirement on tour.
Are you limiting? I mean, we would love to have the problem that we have so many people that we have to decide if we need to limit. I know you had a small tour that went through the Rockies, but as part of that plan, limiting people on a coach, if a coach is 50 people, are you limiting the number you put on?
We are following guidelines based on what kind of the regulations are in a location. But yes, I think it's safe to assume at the moment, group sizes will be smaller, and we are managing that very carefully in terms of just allowing more distancing on the coach. So these first few tours that go out will certainly be, that's taken into consideration. And we'll keep evaluating and monitoring that. And like I said, if one specific region implements regulations, then we will adjust
Yeah,
accordingly.
exactly. You take a couple steps back and you figure out how to make it work.
That's
And
a
that
weekly
comes
thing.
hand in hand with a question that Amy just sent in about COVID testing. It came out now that Hawaii is lifting their quarantine if you have the COVID test before you go in. A lot of states want you to quarantine for 2 weeks unless you can prove you have that negative COVID test. Are you requiring any of that?
We are not. We're obviously, like most, keeping our eyes on that carefully. I think the challenge with the testing is it is a barrier still at the moment because not all of us can easily get tests. You can't go to the Walgreens and pick up a rapid test at the moment. I don't think, anyways. That could have changed in the last couple of days,
Or the last couple of hours.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But absolutely, I think that we'll just keep monitoring that and assessing it. I think once there is rapid testing that more readily available, that could be certainly a game changer for us. But I think there's still some hesitancy with requiring testing, and those states that have it is a barrier because you can't guarantee that you can get the tests in time.
Right. And I'm assuming it's, and I will say thank you, Leslie, from Niagara, sharing that Canadian Airlines will soon be implementing rapid testing at airports, and that will eliminate the 2-week quarantine. And there's several airports in the U.S. I live in Tampa, Florida. Tampa, Florida is doing testing as well at their airports. I think we'll see that kind of coming in to play as they can get the tests, to your point, Stephanie, and implement them.
Right. It is great that many of the airlines, I think United, if I recall, was doing the testing for Hawaii. And so, that's huge because they have access to that rapid testing that we need. So,
yeah. And before I was going to say that, we talked a little bit about communication. Like you and I, before the call started, we were talking about staying in communication and how difficult it was. But, you're touring, and sometimes that's state to state. And you mentioned earlier that rules can change state to state on what you have to do with your coaches that come in. So how are you dealing with that, or is it truly just the best communication possible with your partners?
Yes, it's a combination of things. We have some monitoring systems to just be monitoring sort of weekly or biweekly to keep on track of where states are. We're doing it worldwide, but just speaking in terms of the US and Canada, that we're looking at weekly to just assess what's open, what's closed, what rules have changed at a kind of macro level. And then we're relying on a lot of communication with our suppliers because they certainly are the best way to get information that is kind of relevant to our world. What I've found sometimes is obviously the health organizations for states and provinces are speaking more to the residents of that state or province. And so often it's been difficult to find out what the traveler restrictions are. You kind of have to hunt and peck. So we've gotten better at that, of knowing exactly, where we can get that information quickly, but relying on our supplier partners as well as our CVB and DMO partners to really help give us an overview of what's happening in each destination. But it definitely adds a layer of complexity when your tours are usually multi-state, which many of ours are. So that, that has a big impact on what we're able to get moving or not. So, yeah.
For sure. I think everyone, whether they be a hotel or an attraction or a destination, city or state level, has had the same challenge to gather all the information and find a place to put it for their partners. So it's out there, and it's a constant. It's a constant because it seems like it changes all the time.
Yes. And like you alluded to, it's like every week, some days it feels like 5 steps forward and 10 back, and 2, it just depends on the week, it seems. But at least we are for the most part, in most areas, they seem to be moving in the right direction, and that's reassuring.
Absolutely. And we are thrilled that you are taking those 5 steps back and 10 steps, 5 steps forward and 10 steps back to keep tours moving and keep them on track. It means a lot. Question about vaccinations. I mean, that's top of mind right now. We all want vaccinations. So any conversation at your level that you might require a vaccination if one becomes available to tour?
We have not gotten there. At least I have not been in those conversations. I think we're just watching to see when vaccinations, if we can get there, and then I think those conversations will likely happen. But yes, it's right now we're just willing for vaccinations.
Exactly. Just waiting for when to get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Absolutely.
So Greg Eckhart, we has a great question about updates, COVID-19 travel updates. From a destination standpoint, what's the best way to get them to you? A posting on their site, an email to you. What's the easiest way for you to get them, or how would you like to receive them?
Combination. I think if they can have something really clearly outlined on their website, that makes it very easy for trade to get a real sense of what's happening in the destination with updates. There's a few states that have been very thorough with that. There's a few destinations as well that have been really good about posting what's open, what's closed, and where they are with some of the top key restrictions in terms of gathering size. Just dissecting some of that information that's really relevant to travelers, I think is important to have. We've got a couple of our city partners. I saw one the other day that they're going to be sending out a weekly or bi-weekly just email. And so we could sign up to get that. And it will just be an email to advise us where they are in their reopening. And I like that. It's pushing information to us. We can keep it on file and easily review it. So it seems like more and more of our destination partners are now starting to roll out some great tools like that to help us access information easily.
Yeah, I love that. Especially if you can have it in one place, you can just go and click and know where it is. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this question, and then we're going to move to have what your customers are thinking. So we could probably talk about this for an hour, and we have a lot to cover. Yeah. But I've had 2 or 3 questions about the trip in Canada. So I'm assuming it was a Canadian group that was traveling within Canada since the borders aren't open.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. We didn't sneak Americans in under the fence or anything. So.
Well, we wanted to know how, because we're ready to sneak Canadians down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was marketed to Canada. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to switch from, kind of the health and safety protocols to what your customers are saying. Obviously you've had to move some people from 20 to 21. You have a great plan that is allowing that. I also read that your international programs, you kind of stopped until January of 21, right?
Yes.
So what are your customers saying? They're booking, they're rebooking or rescheduling. You have tours running in November. What's most important to them to book?
Well, we're definitely getting a lot of interest from our travelers and from our agency community. We work obviously quite closely with agents throughout the U.S., Canada. We have selling offices we have selling offices in Toronto, here in the U.S., as well as Australia, New Zealand, and the U.K. So we have offices in all of those regions that are selling to those markets. And, I think overall what we're hearing is there's a great desire to travel, but the general sentiment seems to be that many have kind of, pushed the proverbial pause button because they're waiting to evaluate what's happening with all these border and restrictions and travel, regulations on quarantining or testing. I think that causes, the last few months has caused just a lot of confusion for travelers. Is, can I travel or not? Will that border be open or not? And so there is kind of a general sense in select areas that they're just waiting. So as borders start to reopen, as restrictions start to drop, we're starting to see more of that confidence in booking, which is great. I read this week that TSA had one of their biggest travel weeks of screening. I think they screened in one day over 1 million people, which is the most they've screened since March. So that tells us that people are wanting to travel and they're ready. And if they can start to have some good travel experiences, whether that's going to visit friends and family, or a quick getaway, here in their country or in Canada, and they will start to feel more comfortable and confident. I traveled last week. It was the first airplane I'd gotten on since February, and felt pretty confident. Um, it was odd having to wear the mask all the time, but I think we've all gotten kind of used to that. So I think our travelers are the same. As they start to feel a little more comfortable and confident with that, they will start to rebook. We're seeing great and very encouraging signs out of the U.S. market on a lot of our domestic touring. And so, that's very encouraging. And, we'll keep working on different initiatives in different countries to get travel working.
I love that. So, out of the North American markets, are there any particular? I think you might be frozen a little bit, Stephanie. If you can still hear me. Oh, there we go. All better now.
Yeah.
Um, so, are there markets? Are there North American markets that are more popular than others? You have a few tours going out in November. Where are they going?
They will be going to some of the southern parks. So we'll be sort of Vegas, Zion, Bryce, in those areas. So that was programs that we had actually already published, and so we've been able to keep those on the books for this winter. So that's exciting. And we continue to look at different destinations. We are launching and continuing to evaluate domestic tours for domestic markets. So the Canada tour last week was an example of a tour a shorter tour we designed specifically for the Canadian market. We will be launching some of that as well in the UK. We launched some tours recently in the UK market for UK travelers. Again, because we have a selling office over there, and we'll be continuing to look at opportunities like that. So there are new initiatives that this is forcing, all of us to look at, and just look at more domestic, because as borders stay closed for more time, we have to rely on our key market here. So,
Absolutely. So, knowing that you have your tours going to the national parks, and you're looking at more domestic tours, when obviously you have the tours on the books, we've heard the trend is outside, open spaces, those types of things. Are you finding that your clients are requesting those? And the next question is going to be primary versus secondary destinations. Like, do they want to be beyond the gateway? And are you having to make that shift?
If you look at some of our trends at the moment, what we're seeing based on what's booking for the 2021 season, I think there's definitely a focus on some of those more open space, outdoor areas. So we're seeing a lot of interest in our national park regions. We're seeing some good interest actually in sort of the Northeast at the moment. In Canada, a lot of the same patterns of kind of interest in those outdoor, more natural areas for sure. So those would probably be the primary ones at the moment. But the other trend we're seeing is a little more short booking patterns. So I think it goes back to that idea of people are on pause at the moment, and they'll make decisions once they're closer to departure. And I think some of that will then depend on what's happening in the region.
Right.
And that may make
have an average booking window now. I know we were talking before the call about forecasting, and we're like, what's that anymore? But I mean, we had Expedia talk about some of their trends that they were seeing a couple of weeks ago. And their number one trend was booking like 3 days out for one night, and I'm like, wow, okay. So, on a touring side, do you have kind of a window that's come into play?
I don't think we've seen a discernible trend yet, but if you take these few tours that we're now operating, the window is definitely within 60 days, which is not necessarily a normal trend for group travel. So it will be interesting to see if that trend continues as we move forward. But I think it's safe to anticipate that there will be more last minute bookings than we've probably seen in the past, especially for 2021, as things sort of continue to be a bit in flux, I think it's realistic to assume we will be seeing a lot more last minute bookings. So, and that's why we've had a lot of conversations with our suppliers about adjusting some of their normal requirements for when we send rooming lists, or when cancellation policies start to, kick in, is because we were understanding that there would probably be some more last minute,
Yeah,
meaning 3 to
lots of
6
last
days.
minute needs that weren't there before, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Mhm.
Has your accommodation changed at all? Obviously, generally hotel room. Are your customers requesting more of self-catering units? Are you looking at vacation rentals at all? Michael from Destin, he had a great question, like right at the beginning. He's from the Northwest Florida area. And they've never been a primary tour destination because it's more vacation rentals. So
Mhm.
curious as to if that might change, or if you've looked at that.
No, I don't think that's never been in our wheelhouse to do sort of longer term vacation rentals. It's not our business model. So, at the moment, no, that's not something we've really considered. I think where we've launched some new initiatives or expanded on initiatives we already have are more about the style of the group travel. So, the one tour we did to the Rockies last week was more about getting into Banff and sort of being there for a few more nights than normal. So I think that's where we've looked at some of these escapes programs that we've launched. They'll afford people maybe 2 or 3 nights in one destination, versus just one night stays. So there's some of that. That we've seen. We've also seen interest in our undiscovered portfolio that we launched, and those are new tours that we launched for North America that kind of feature maybe lesser known destinations. And again, it focuses on some park areas or outdoor areas that we haven't highlighted before in tours. So, for instance, we have the Quebec Gaspé program that takes people out into the Gaspé Peninsula. We have some new tours that are featuring some Southwest parks that we haven't in the past promoted. 3-night stays in Sedona, different parks like Canyon de Chelly and Chinle, and some areas like that where maybe we haven't toured in the past and that are sort of lesser known, maybe lesser visited. So I think that's been more the direction we've taken versus going outside of our wheelhouse in terms of vacation stays. Or I saw a flash of driving vacations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those things have not been in our wheelhouse here in North America for a little while. So I think we're sticking to the touring.
Yeah. Well, it sounds though like it may not be what we consider a drive vacation, but you're kind of converting, you're kind of doing your own little take on a driving vacation with some of these new destinations that you're adding.
Absolutely. And they have the benefit of having a tour director that's pretty seasoned and knows what to expect when you get to a destination. All our tour directors are being sort of provided with a lot of information about, okay, when you get to this destination, do they have to wear masks? Do they have to, what are the protocols? So the tour director is armed with all of that information. So it does really, I think, help facilitate, and people don't, if they're traveling with us, they don't have to think too much about that type of thing.
How are you handling restaurants? How are you handling dining or attraction entry, anything like that in the program?
Yeah. Restaurants, well, we've carefully vetted the ones that we used, recently and in our upcoming tours. So it's really just about understanding what protocols they do have in place, what their expectations are, and then understanding what our protocols are and whether, what the restaurant is offering sort of meets our general protocols. Those that we're using have done a great job of managing capacity, managing social distancing, mask wearing, as well as all of their cleaning protocols. So based on what I saw last week while I was out on the road, they've been operating for a little while, so they've got it down to a science at the moment. So it's great. I think I know that we're all kind of keeping our eye on capacity restrictions and if we can have groups in certain facilities. So we'll be kind of vetting all of that and reviewing that with our suppliers. So we sort of understand what we're getting into. Mm-hmm.
Love that. And it's funny, Diana has a question about attractions, and I was asking that question about attractions when her question was coming in. So Diana, we're on the same wavelength. So question, obviously you include attractions in some of your programs, but do you contract direct with them?
Mm-hmm. Here in the U.S. and Canada, we pretty much contract direct for all our services. So we are working and communicating as much as possible as we can direct. And as we get rolling in different destinations, we'll be reaching out to more and more suppliers so that, what we don't want to do is reach out now for a tour that might operate in May and get protocols, because between now and then it's going to change quite dramatically, I hope. And so as we start to get rolling, I think then it's a regroup with the supplier to make sure that we are understanding what's needed. So it was great to see some protocols in practice last week. There was a couple of stops that we made where they have a dedicated entry, a dedicated exit. They had great signage so that people were really mindful of moving through the attraction or the store or whatever it may be, and keeping safe. So it was great to see all these protocols in practice, and that the travelers didn't seem to mind that. I think it's become a little bit more normal now. So that was great to see.
Absolutely. And we've seen that. We talked a little bit on our prep call yesterday from the webinars that we had in late March to now. We've kind of seen that trend of people getting more used to policies and safety guidelines, and a little more acceptable when you're going through and doing things. Diana had a follow-up question on if she could have your contact information, which I knew, as soon as we started talking contracting, and the answer is yes, Stephanie. We're going to share her information with everyone after the webinar is over. But talking about contracting, let's talk about that. You are contracting new destinations, and that hasn't stopped when you're looking for some of these tours in 21 that are going to go to beyond the gateway destinations, or kind of that unique attraction that we've been hearing for years and years. I want to live like a local. I want to do something different. So you are currently contracting.
Yes, our anything that we have online is obviously already contracted, and so we've been working with our suppliers for those tours since probably a year ago, and so we will be looking at 2022, which is exciting. So things will be coming through to suppliers there, and then as I said, as we're continuing to look for sort of off-season opportunities and domestic programs like the Rockies program we just operated. Those are a little bit more on last-minute opportunities. So continue to reach out to our suppliers and move through this with them. And so there were some new destinations introduced for 2021.
Mm-hmm. Love that. So off-season. Tell us what that means to you. What is off-season for the Globus family of brands, or specifically Cosmos, because that's what's operating right now?
It's going to, well, actually what's operating now is Globus, and they're under the Escapes by Globus brand. So that's what's operating at the moment. Cosmos, we've not operated any Cosmos tours yet. So off-season, obviously, I think will vary based on destination. So, off-season for some locations will be different than others, but it's typically going to be those times when it's, lesser traveled. Maybe the weather isn't sunny and blue skies, but it still affords people a great opportunity to get into a destination when maybe there's not the masses. So it's a great opportunity, I think, to showcase destinations when they're a little maybe less busy. I think this goes to so many of the conversations we've had in the past few years about over tourism and what's happening in certain destinations with high volumes of traffic, going through at one period of time. And so this allows that to spread that business out throughout the year. So it really will vary by destination, but at the moment we're looking for, those opportunities for the escapes program. It is typically in those shoulder or off-season periods.
So we've had some questions come in about how people can work with you. And specifically it's, DMOs want to play a part in booking tours and how they can do that with you. I mean, I know you work with your DMO partners and contact them for information, but how can a DMO specifically help you in booking your tours?
Well, we work so closely with so many DMO and CVB partners, and so hopefully they know that they can reach out to us at any time if there are new ideas or new opportunities that they want to present to us. They can certainly reach out by email. We have a team here. We have several product managers that are working constantly on evaluating new opportunities and new touring destinations. And so often the planning starts with them. They evaluate, and determine whether or not that destination will work in our overall portfolio. And then from there, it comes through to contracting and then obviously tour operations. So there's sort of a team of us that are constantly kind of evaluating new opportunities. So I'd recommend kind of reaching out to us, and we can give some indication of what we're looking for and what ideas they may have to present to us. So that's often at least the way to get it rolling.
Yeah. Love that. So a question about over tourism, and Michelle, thank you for this. Question really is, in a pandemic with residents kind of touchy about, groups coming into their destination. I know you've just had one tour, so it might be premature to ask you this question, but has there been conversations on if maybe the local residents, don't want big tour buses rolling up into their destination or not? On ways that you may handle that. You may not have run into this yet, but.
Well, we've definitely had that conversation because I could see it. I mean, the optics of a big bus with a whole group of people spilling off of it, to some may be disconcerting, but I would flip it and say that it is a very controlled environment on a group tour. And we have the ability to kind of manage and be there to support our guests. Like we kind of alluded to, we can actually prep, our tour director can prep those individuals. Like, okay, we're going into this community or this attraction, masks are mandatory. Don't forget to sanitize your hands going on and off the coach. Don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. I mean, we are prompting them and sort of guiding them through. The other consideration is when we arrive at a destination, the tour director goes in and gets the keys from the front desk. The tour director goes to the attraction to get the tickets. It's not all these individual people having sort of contacts with that front desk person. We can actually kind of facilitate in reducing touch points and contact points in some cases. So it's a very controlled, I think, environment that once people start to understand that piece of it, it's more, it's just easier, I think, to explain to people that they shouldn't be fearful of a big group. We're managing symptoms daily with people, reminding them to stay well, to, kind of let us know if they aren't feeling well. So there are a lot of controls in place, I think, to help keep guests as safe as possible. I mean, Absolutely. We can never guarantee anything, but.
Of course. Have you ventured into the voluntourism world at all?
Oh, we have not necessarily into the voluntourism as I understand it, where we're facilitating volunteer experiences on tour. That has not been something we do. We have a lot of initiatives to help support local communities. Actually, there's a slew of them in terms of economic support, sustainable support. So if anyone was interested in that, on our website, there's sort of a list of all of the things that we do as a company to kind of help with different sustainable initiatives.
Perfect. We had a destination, we had a DMO ask, how they could go about tapping into that. So wanted to see if you were providing that before we asked that specific question.
There's a lot of information on the Globus journeys.com. I think it's under the Globus Cares banner, and it sort of talks a little bit about some of our initiatives.
Perfect. So let's talk about marketing for a little bit. For a while there, the conversation was, do I market? Do I not market? Am I being tone deaf if I'm marketing right now? But you have tours going out, so you're marketing. That I know. May not be a marketing genius, but I know if you have tours going out, you're marketing. So how have you been talking with your clients? What's been the interaction?
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what we were all trying to evaluate early on, right? When borders are closed and people can't leave their homes, how do you keep them engaged? So for many months, we had a campaign called Dreaming Doesn't Stop. And so we were featuring every week just new ideas for travel and travel videos and, just trying to get people to really stay engaged and keep planning, but you don't have to make any decisions now. You just have to keep dreaming about travel. And so that was a great way to just showcase a lot of different destinations, both in North America and overseas. And we worked with various DMO partners to highlight different destinations. So that was a really great campaign that I think just, again, helped with the communication and helped that communication keep going with our agent community and our travelers. We also took a lot of opportunity. Our BDM team has been very busy. So our business development team out there has been really busy engaging with our agents, doing a lot of trainings. I mean, they took a lot of opportunity to do online webinar training, different events as well with our agents and their clients. So hosting little, Zoom events where we could showcase destinations. So I think has been really about just keeping the conversation going and keeping people engaged with travel. And then it's a more subtle message as you start to look at new opportunities for traveling. And so we have launched all of our product for 2021, and Avalon Waterways has even launched 2022. So, our agents, because we're keeping that communication and that dialogue moving, they know that we're ready and open for sale now. So.
Love that. And I love your blogs. I mean, you've had a great blog presence throughout this entire time with really good information on it. I think the latest one I told you, the latest one I read was In Touring We Trust, and it kind of laid out all of your planning and booking guidelines and your safe and clean guidelines, and that was really awesome to see. As an ex-DMO, I sit up really tall when I hear that you have videos and trainings and blogs, and I'm sure that everyone on the call wants to know how they get involved in that. If you're still doing them, if they can send information to be involved in that. Is that something that you partnered with some destinations? Is that something that they can send in or contact someone to ask about?
Yeah, they can certainly reach out to me. I'll in the interim, I'll also connect with we have a marketing team that manages most of that. I'll be honest, I'm not as engaged in that part of our business. Again, let's go back to health and safety and contact, right, which I'm like living, breathing at the moment. But I could certainly get them more information on that and where we are with those plans and how we're moving forward. Yeah, it's sort of an ongoing work in progress.
Completely. I think a lot of our destinations have worked within the city, within the region, within the state, really to create trainings, that they could push out. So certainly I know you work really closely with your partners. So they're standing up real tall and going, I want to talk to your marketing team because you have tours running. So what, and as you're going through, you talked a little bit about T's and C's and some of the changes that you're asking for flexibility on with hotels. Are there any, that stick out that our partners on the line will know that, hey, I need to look at kind of our terms and conditions and see where we might need to change or be a little more flexible moving forward and even into 21?
Yeah, I absolutely think, 2021 we will have to likely be more flexible than we've all been before. And I think understanding of what is needed to kind of facilitate, bookings. We'd like to think that most group companies that we can be kind of back to normal in terms of group size next year. But a lot can happen between now and the spring. So, we have to be ready to be a bit nimble in terms of whether it's group size or, like we said, sort of more last minute. So I would sort of, I guess, encourage our suppliers, and we've had lots of conversations with our partners about, looking at your cancellation policies, looking at any attrition that's required, looking at group policies. Is your policy right now comp of one room for 25 rooms? Well, that may not be a realistic target for a group company to hit at the moment. So really looking at that so that all operators, we have as sort of much opportunity to sell and operate if something happens that you have to run smaller tours, and sort of facilitating all of us getting sort of back to regular operating practices. But I think, a lot of that will be needed in 2021 to ensure overall success for any tour operator out there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we've all taken a step back and reevaluated what we need to do to get this industry moving again, for sure. And speaking of that, after 9/11, after the recession, the things that we can think that kind of hit the industry hard, but nothing in comparison to what we're dealing with right now. For it to come back, we saw a lot of enticements. We saw a lot of deals, is that something that you're looking for right now? And if so, any specific thing that works better with your clients than others?
Yeah. So I know that was a lot of the discussion, especially this summer as we were all trying to evaluate what was happening and what things will look like next year. And it's still difficult, I think, to pin that down. We went to market holding our 2020 rates for the 2021 season. I would say in most tours, that has been the tactic, is just holding at 2020 pricing for our tours and cruises. So that was the tactic we took. There seems to be a sentiment that we might be able to just remain relatively stable versus, I think, what we all saw after 9/11 was a huge drop. I think there will likely be there's always promotions out there. So we will likely have to just continue to manage and adjust promotions as we see tactical need based on market demand. But I think all of us have to keep in mind, we're essentially competing against the whole world right now. Everyone in the world in our industry, travel industry, is competing for the same travel dollars. And so will the consumer eventually start looking for those deals? I'm sure there's going to be a segment that's looking for the best deal. We're also seeing some studies that indicate right now that what a lot of travelers are looking for is health and safety, that's sort of coming as a leading decision-making piece. Is that might be what helps drive a combination of where does my money go farthest, but also where can I travel to safely?
Right.
And who do I travel with that seems to have a really good, robust safety plan, whether it's picking an individual hotel or picking a tour company. So that's somewhat encouraging. So I think it'll be something we'll continue to look at with our suppliers. We've always tried to be a company that's realistic in what we need to achieve our goals. And so I think we'll continue to take that tactic of asking our suppliers for reasonable concessions that make sense, both for this year and for long term.
Yeah. And maintaining your pricing, your 2020 pricing into 21 is certainly it's an amazing step for your travelers, because safe and clean and reduce people on buses, that costs money. That is something that increases your costs year over year. So it's nice that you have that communication with all of your partners.
Absolutely.
So I promised Stephanie I wouldn't keep her over an hour, and I told her it would fly by, and we only have 5 minutes left. Like I mean, I could sit right with you for another hour about getting into river cruising, and if you're going to do any in the U.S. I know it's mostly in other countries, but if you've looked at doing any of it in North America and what that means, but we won't do that this time. We'll have you back. We'll have you back, and we'll talk about how things are going, and figure out how, hear about all of your great tours that you ran in November, and see how those went. But until then, I'm going to ask you, we both said on our prep call that this is kind of the longest we've been without traveling. That you did go on a trip. I haven't been on a plane in the longest time in my career since I started in this industry. Where do you want to go? We work in travel. Where do you want to go when you can get out and go, when there's no borders closing, when there's no restrictions?
I will be going home to Canada to see my family.
Oh, nice.
My mom and my brother, they're all in Western Canada, and I have not seen them for a long time. So
how hard was it that you guys were running a tour there and you couldn't be there?
I know. It was very difficult. So yes, that will be the absolute first trip I do. So yeah, no bones about it.
I love that. So we just have a few minutes left. What do you have any words of wisdom that you can share with everyone on the call, right? That everyone is, these webinars have been successful because it's real information. We're gathering all the information we can so everybody can make their best plans moving forward. And
I think that's been the key through all of this is just that communication, and that we're a very large industry, but we're also kind of very small when it comes to connecting with each other. And I know we haven't had any trade events. I know you guys have your show coming up soon. And that's been difficult because this is an industry that relies on kind of that networking and face-to-face and relationships. And we've had to do that all through Zoom and phone calls, of which I've done more in the last 7 months, phone calls and definitely Zoom and video calls. But I think that's been so critical, is sharing information with each other so that we all can try to make the best informed decisions. Because I don't think any of us has the complete answer. We're just moving forward based on the best information we have at our fingertips, and going from there. So I think that's been my biggest takeaway, is how vital it is to rely on each other to manage this.
Couldn't agree more. I think the Tourism Strong hashtag speaks volume, because we are a family. You said it very well. Big industry, really small family that works together. We had one last quick question from Estella from Fort Worth. She's been on all the calls too. I miss seeing her in person. Curious as to if you're going to be doing any in-person or virtual events. We're holding our in-person event in November. It's in the middle of all of your tours going out. ABA is doing their in-person event in June. We're looking forward to that and that running. Are you going to be doing any in-person, or have you done any virtual?
We have, let's see, we had one of my team members did the Go West virtual event. I believe that was in August. I will be attending the USTOA virtual events coming up in December. Then our plan is to be attending ABA in person. So I'm trying to think, that's what on the docket so far. We're waiting for information from Rendezvous Canada to see what will be happening up there, so that hopefully we can get a team there as well. So we'll continue to evaluate, because we would love to get out and see some of our partners in person.
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough. You've taken an hour with us. I know that you've been doing a lot of planning and a lot of research on your end. So I'm glad that we could find a date that worked, and you could take the time to talk to all of the attendees on the call. It means the world to them to get leaders in the industry like the Globus family of brands to kind of learn what they're doing, so we can all move through this together.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And everyone on the call, we'll be back next week. talking with more operators and continuing this conversation. And until then, have a great day and a great weekend. Bye, everyone.